Today's talk is called Nisargadatta and the Atom Bomb. At one of his talks, Nisargadatta was asked by a woman whether someone with his perception of life could create and use something as destructive as an atom bomb. This is a question about morality that all teachers are asked at some point with different examples. The basic question is whether someone who sees without separation could act in what people call a destructive or evil manner. The answers vary when teachers try to speak from the perspective of the questioner. Some may say that any act is possible since there is no longer any possible judgment about action, while others say that what we call destructive acts are unlikely because such actions seems to rely upon belief in a story. Their point is that if you look at the actions most people judge as wrong, the lack of a sense of volition, meaning, and purpose appears to diminish the intent. Actions requiring beliefs about ideology or revenge or hatred of others would lose their foundation, not because the so-called enlightened person has a higher standard of morality, but because they have no desire or belief that compels them to act, and they do not see others as separate. Yet, as has also been taught by people like Ramesh, the mind-body organism has its programming. So, despite what I have just said, there is no inherent reason to assume that a pattern of behavior that is programmed will or will not change when the sense of a separate functioning being is no longer perceived. If one is a maker of atom bombs, upon awakening, they may simply continue making bombs without attaching any meaning or purpose to the act. I know this is not what you wish to hear. And of course, there are no enlightened or awakened people. All ideas about morality are merely concepts. All actions are simply what appears. If we see one culture where people are peaceful, there is no reason to attribute moral virtue to them. If we see another culture where people are aggressive, there is no need to attribute immorality to them. People simply do what they do, and there is no door or volition. If an aggressive and violent culture has beliefs that aggression is not as virtuous as peace, as is often the case, this is as meaningful as a barking dog telling you it believes that singing like a bird is the ideal sound for a dog to make. The dog still barks, people still fight, and others may be peaceful. What is, simply is, the stories and beliefs people tell about actions are of no consequence whatsoever. In fact, in the dream of today's apparent world, you would have to say that fighting and aggressive behavior is not uncommon and thus normal behavior. Nisargadatta said that the beliefs that seeing through the illusion of separation will lead to peaceful behavior is just a symplectic tale told to, as he put it, satisfy the ignorant. The woman who asked him the question as is the case with many people I talk to, wish to feel that this message leads people to live more peaceful lives. Nisargadatta immediately undercut the simplistic explanation by then addressing the crux of the matter. He said, not a single object has any independent existence as such. We all are mere appearances, and without independent existence, how can you act? Do you indeed act at all? Or do you only react to an outside stimulus like a puppet? If you would sit still and see what happens, you would quickly realize that we do not really live, but are being lived. That life as such is nothing more than what might be called an apparent functioning. When what he expressed is understood, it is very clear that the apparent actions of anyone are not their own actions. No one acts. Thus, you cannot separate actions and attribute them to an independent owner or doer of actions. You cannot separate the actions of what you feel is your own mind-body organism and attribute them to any owner or doer of actions. Any actions may appear, and no one causes it or does it. Nisargadatta then said, now let us come back to your own atom bomb. If you have really perceived this, is it possible for you to go on thinking any longer that there is any villain in life with an independent, autonomous entity possessing enormous power for evil, or that there is any avatar possessing enormous power for good? Surely, you must realize that good or bad are mere interdependent opposites, essential manifestations in duality, appearance acting their respective roles. Indeed, there can be no entity separate from the overall. Besides quoting Nisargadatta's talk, another way I illustrate this subject is with my talk on the morality of clouds. When people ask me about moral questions and behavior, I ask them to imagine a sky filled with clouds. If it is a cloudy day, we walk outside and watch the cloud pass overhead. I tell them that it has become obvious to me that certain clouds possess a very high degree of moral virtue, while other clouds are amoral, and yet another clouds are immoral and truly evil clouds. They may laugh or not understand, so I make it very clear to them that the shape of a cloud, how dense it appears, whether it carries moisture or not, and most importantly, the direction it travels, are all indicators of its moral virtue. A small cumulus cloud moving east to west at a slow pace across the sky is generally a well-behaved moral cloud with a good character and good standing within the cloud community. On the other hand, a nimbus cloud moving west to east with a large diameter is almost always up to no good and is often a purely evil cloud. I can go on, judging all the possible shapes and sizes and types of clouds, and telling people that if we delve deeply in meteorology, we can discover the fine distinctions between clouds, and thus truly determine which clouds are good and which ones are bad. Judging the morality of clouds makes as much sense as looking at the world of apparent human people and judging their behavior as good or bad. Clouds simply appear floating in the sky, and to attribute any volition or intention or morality to a cloud would strike almost any person as completely ridiculous and absurd. In the very same manner, people appear walking upon the world, and to attribute any volition or intention or morality to a person is completely ridiculous and absurd. Though this subject seems difficult for some, it is in fact one of the simplest topics I discuss. Towards the end of his appearing in this dream of life, Nisargadatta was asked about the question of moral and ethical behavior. It is reported that the question caused the very elderly man such amusement that he burst into a fit of laughter. He was surprised that anyone attending his talks still might have such types of thinking. He said, "Is there any question of having to decide the propriety or otherwise of any action? Who will make the decision? Does one have the independence of volition to make the decision? Is there really any choice? Once it is perceived that there is no entity with any independence of action, would living thereafter not be totally non-volition living? Would not, in other words, the perceiving itself lead to an abandonment, or more accurately, a spontaneous sensation of the very concept of volition activity? One may think that one lives. Actually, one is only being lived. There is simply not any more to say about this subject. Love dreams the world into being. Its appearance is a photon of light on a sunny day. Yet, there is not ever any separate photon. The atom bomb and the sun and all that appears are appearances in love. They come and they go, and your naming and separating them is the illusion that makes for distinctions where none exists at all. Love is individual. Love cannot be judged. Love cannot be divided. Love cannot be separated. When love is felt, it is simply clear that there is no duality, no morality, no opposites, not two, not one, not any beings of things at all. There is only this, only the dream without a dreamer, only love without a lover, only love.